On this short video, I want to discuss a possible large letter in our weekly reading, in our Parsha, Shemot, and in general, the idea of large and small letters in our Torah Scrolls. So, of course, everybody knows that in Hebrew, there are no capital letters, which introduces some ambiguity. I'm going to get back to this again later. Sometimes it's not exactly clear if something is a proper name or just a regular word. And of course, sentences are not distinguished this way. But this is one of those things that is actually, the programmers sometimes say, it's not a bug, it's a feature. The ambiguity sometimes actually gives additional possible meanings, which only makes more interesting the interpretations of the Torah. And I'll give an interesting example a little bit later. Whatever the case may be, most of the Torah text consists of just letters. Not large, not small. There is no specific size of letters that's required by the Jewish law. If one could write in very tiny script, the Sefer Torah would be completely kosher. In fact, the king, the Jewish king, had to go with a Sefer Torah pretty much everywhere, except to the bathroom and things like that, to the bathhouse. So how do you think he carried it? If it would be a large scroll, it's very unlikely he'd be able to carry it around. So most likely he would write for himself a very small scroll of Torah that could be just hanged on the neck, for instance. It's a kind of Sefer Torah that's the size of maybe just a few inches. It's totally possible. There are even Sefer Torah like that today. Most Sefer Torah, of course, are much larger than that. But there is no specific law of how large it has to be. Well, what's interesting is that within the text, whatever is the norm for that particular text of the size of the letters, there are a few letters that are written smaller than usual and a few letters written larger than usual. Most people know about this. When the Sefer Torah is shown to everyone, Ashkenazic Jews usually do it after the reading, Sephardi Jews do it before the reading. One could see sometimes there are letters that are of different size than the norm. And there are actually different traditions sometimes. On the previous video I discussed a little bit the Kri and Ktiv. Those traditions are pretty solid. We know exactly all the places where it's written one way and pronounced a different way. But with regards to small and large letters, there were a lot of different traditions. And as I said, the size of letters actually doesn't matter in terms of the kashrut of the Sefer Torah. So therefore, if some letters are written large or small, the Sefer Torah will still be kosher, since there is no specific size required by the Jewish law. So the traditions of small and large letters differ in quite a bit. For instance, according to one tradition, throughout the entire Tanakh, the entire Mikra, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, there has to be one large and one small letter somewhere for every letter. But there are other traditions. Some traditions apparently had, just in the 5 books of Moshe, large letters of every kind. Every letter of the alphabet was large in one place. And there are all kinds of traditions. So in the book of Shemot that we're dealing with now, there are not that many large letters. There are a couple of large letters in Parshat Ki Tisa. But in our Parsha, there is one tradition according to which there is a large letter. Most Sifrei Torah today, as far as I understand, are not written that way. But there was such a tradition. It's brought down in ancient sources that, according to some traditions, the letter Tet in the word Tov in the beginning of Parsha, when it says that Yocheved, the mother of Moshe, gave birth to her son and saw that he is Tov, he is good. All children are good in the eyes of their mother. So there are a few different interpretations. One simple interpretation is that even though she gave a premature birth, there's an interpretation of our sages that she gave birth after slightly more than 6 months of pregnancy. So normally children like that don't survive. But she saw that he's Tov, he's fully formed, he's good. And therefore she decided to try to hide him and risk, and there is at least a chance that he will survive. And actually there is an interpretation among our sages that one of the names of Moshe was Tov. The name Moshe was given to him by the daughter of Paro, although not all commentators agree with it. Some say actually Yocheved gave him the name, even though it was the daughter of Paro who basically adopted him. But it's not clear in the Torah. It doesn't openly say that it was the daughter of Paro who named him Moshe. Maybe Yocheved named him Moshe. Maybe the daughter of Paro consulted Yocheved. But whatever the case may be, there could be other names that Moshe was given originally. And one of the possibilities is Tov, that she actually named him Tov. There is such a name, at least in theory. I don't think today anybody's named Tov. There's named Tuvia, which is close to it. Whatever the case may be, if Tov is a proper name, maybe, and in fact some commentators say that, maybe that's why, according to some traditions, it was written with capital T, Tet, Tov. Now, as I mentioned, generally we do not have capital letters, which introduces these types of ambiguities. For example, on a different video I was discussing the 120th Psalm, which deals with the very strong power of a bad tongue. How much damage can people do by the news that they spread, by what they tweet, whether it's Hitler and his department of propaganda that was incredibly successful in demonizing the Jews, whether it's certain media today. And I was discussing that the first of the series of Shira Malot praise, the psalmist prays exactly against that, to save us from the terrible Lashon Hara, terrible things that people say against us. May Hashem save us from the new Julius Streichers. In case you don't know, Julius Streicher was one of the people who was executed by the Allies after the Nuremberg trials. There were 10 Nazi criminals that were hanged, and most of them were actual murderers. But Julius Streicher didn't murder anybody. All he did was propaganda against the Jews. But his powerful words, of course, made Jews into some kind of cockroaches that it was later easy for people to kill them and not have any regrets. So the propaganda itself was considered by the Allies just as powerful or more as the actual murder, which is exactly what our sages teach. So when I was discussing the psalm, there was one verse there that is not exactly clear what Meshech there means. Some say that Meshech there is a proper word. Meshech is a certain country. It's mentioned in the Parshat Noach also. But others say it's from the word long, limshoch, something that seems to be dragging kind of. And that's the Torah Scrolls translation based on Radak, that the psalmist is praying that the long exile will finish. So either he's praying about specific exile to a specific country, or about long exile. So that's depending on whether Meshech is a proper name, or the Meshech here is just a word, not the name. So, like I said, in a certain sense, the ambiguity that's introduced is not a bug, it's a feature. That there are two possibilities and both are beautiful interpretations of the same verse. Maybe both are true in a certain sense. Whatever the case may be, so one possibility is that Tov is written with capital Tet, very unusual, one of those big letters in the Torah, in order to emphasize that Moshe's proper name was Tov. Another possibility is that actually shows that the pregnancy was a full pregnancy, even though it was only 6 months, but it is as if he had been in his mother's womb the normal 9-month pregnancy. So Tet is Gematria 9, to emphasize that he was born completely formed as if he's a 9-month baby, not a 6 plus a few days month baby. So that's some of the interpretations that I found in terms of why the Tet was larger than most letters. But as I mentioned, not all traditions agree with it, and most Sifrei Torah are not written that way anyway. And if you like this video, please press like, and please subscribe to our channel.